What if the universe wasn't waiting for your effort, but for your frequency? In a world that taught you to manifest through striving, you may have missed the deeper signal shaping your reality. This isn't about wishful thinking. It's about becoming the version of yourself whose life already matches what you long for. As you settle into this quiet moment, perhaps the room dim, the air still, a soft hum of presence surrounding you, allow the pace of the outside world to dissolve. You're not here by accident. You're tuning in because something within you is ready to remember. Subscribe if you haven't already, and let us know where you're listening, from what city, what time of day. Imagine this is the doorway, not to a future far off, but to a frequency already alive within you. Tonight, we'll explore how identity becomes signal, how coherence replaces control, and how the quantum field responds not to longing, but to alignment. This is a story about remembrance, not effort, about tuning, not chasing. And it begins right here. You've likely been told that reality responds to repetition, that if you speak what you desire with enough conviction, visualize it with enough clarity, and return to it each morning like a sacred ritual, eventually the universe will hand it to you like a reward for your persistence. But what if that isn't how it works? Not truly, not deeply. What if, hidden beneath the layers of vision boards and affirmation scripts, there is a quieter truth, one that doesn't require shouting into the void, but instead asks you to become so still, so inwardly aligned, that the universe has no choice but to echo you? This isn't about effort. It's about coherence. And coherence is not perfection. It's harmony. Just like a musical note doesn't need to be loud to be beautiful, your signal doesn't need to be strong to be effective. It needs to be clean, uninterrupted, undiluted by fear, contradiction, or the static of trying too hard. Because every time you try to become what you already are, you fracture the signal. You say, "I am not that yet." And in that declaration, subtle though it may be, you place your desire in the future instead of the now. But the quantum field doesn't operate in timelines. It responds only to resonance. What you experience is not summoned. It is selected, like turning the dial of an ancient radio. You're not creating new frequencies with your desire. You're aligning yourself with ones that already exist. That's the quiet revolution. Not changing the world, but shifting yourself to a version of it that already matches you. The frequency of abundance, of love, of peace. It isn't waiting. It's broadcasting. Always. The question is, are you quiet enough to hear it? Most people are not resisting life. They are resisting alignment. They long for change while embodying the same emotional tone every day. Anxiety, self-doubt, a hint of hurry. They meditate for 10 minutes and then worry for 10 hours. They ask the universe for clarity, but speak to themselves in loops of confusion. And then they wonder why things feel stuck. But the field is not withholding anything. It mirrors your primary signal. Not your hopes, not your Instagram captions, but the energetic atmosphere you live inside when no one is watching. That's the frequency that shapes what you experience. Pause here. Really pause. How does the future version of you, the one who already lives in ease, freedom, love, actually feel? Not what they have, but how they move through the world. How they breathe, how they rise in the morning, how they speak when they're alone. That is the version of you that carries the signal. And that version is not mythical. It's not buried under years of healing. It's one choice away. It's presence. It's coherence. Because in the quantum field, time is elastic. The past does not define you unless you continue vibrating in harmony with it. And the future does not reward you unless you collapse into it. And collapse is not a violent act. It's a surrender. It's saying, I am willing to feel like the person who already has it, even before it arrives. Especially before it arrives. That emotional match is the tuning fork. That's the secret, hidden not in some ancient manuscript, but in the beat of your own heart. There's something elegant about this, something strangely calming. You don't need to force your way into a new timeline. You need only to tune yourself like an instrument. The static of effort dissolves when you shift from getting to being. It's not fake confidence. It's embodied resonance. And the field listens. Now here's where it gets more unusual. You felt this before, those days where things align without explanation, when coincidences pile up like breadcrumbs, when someone texts you the moment you think of them, when parking spaces open up just as you arrive. These aren't accidents. They're harmonics. Your field was in coherence, and reality became pliable, responsive. And then, maybe the next day, it disappeared again, not because it was lost, but because your signal shifted. You slipped back into doubt, into control, into trying, and the melody broke. This is why consistency isn't about discipline. It's about returning. Returning to the version of yourself that doesn't seek, but emits. That doesn't cling, but allows. That doesn't force, but resonates. The field will not punish you for wobbling, but it cannot echo what you do not sustain. Let this be an invitation, not to effort, but to subtle mastery. Ask yourself gently, what is the tone I wake up with each day? Not your to-do list, not your 5-year plan, but your tone. Is it soft? Is it hopeful? Is it grounded in peace or brittled with urgency? That tone carries further than any mantra ever could. That's what the field hears. That's what shapes the shapeable. And this is not philosophy. It's physics. Heart-brain coherence, a measured state where the rhythm of your heartbeat and the pattern of your brainwaves begin to harmonize, sends a stable signal into the environment. It's been tracked. It's been studied. And more importantly, it can be felt. When you are in coherence, the people around you shift. The conversations change. The room softens. The dog calms. The child leans in. These are not coincidences. They are responses. So no, you don't need to chase your dreams like they are fleeing. You need to settle, tune, breathe from the place where the dream has already happened, and let your body catch up. Let your biology become the evidence. Let your posture declare what your mouth hasn't said. Because when your signal becomes coherent, reality becomes obedient, not in submission, but in symmetry. The field will not rush you. It is patient. It does not reward the loudest voice, but the clearest one. The one undistorted by contradiction. The one brave enough to feel like a rival while standing in the middle of uncertainty. That's emotional courage. And that's the language of creation. So ask again, what are you broadcasting? Not your words, not your intentions, but the invisible music between your thoughts. The baseline emotion you carry through ordinary hours. That's what calls the future in. That's what filters your reality. You can't manipulate this. You can't hack it with scripting or spreadsheets. You must become it. Let it shape your rhythm, not just your routines. Let it inform how you eat, how you touch, how you rest. Because the field listens most loudly to how you live. When no one is looking. It hears your breath as declaration, your stillness as alignment, your exhale as signal. You're not here to perform for the universe. You're here to become so resonant with your desire that the world you long for finds you like a lost memory returning to its home. There's something sacred about realizing you don't have to wait anymore. That the version of reality you thought was months or years away isn't hanging on some external event, but on a shift so quiet, it's often missed, the decision to become internally fluent in the world you wish to experience. This isn't a metaphor. It's quantum instruction. The signal doesn't wait for permission. It waits for clarity, for commitment, not in the way of discipline, but in the way of emotional tone. When you begin to live as if the thing is already so, not because you're pretending, but because you've integrated the frequency of it. That's when the unseen begins to reorganize. And yet, the mind rebels. It asks, how can I feel rich when my account is empty? How can I feel loved when I'm alone? How can I feel healthy when my body aches? The answer isn't denial, it's attunement. You're not lying to yourself. You're tuning yourself gently, honestly, consistently toward a version of life where these things are already flowing, not to escape the current moment, but to influence it from within. The field doesn't need proof. It needs presence. And the deeper your presence with that chosen frequency, the more convincing your broadcast becomes not to others, but to reality itself. Let's go deeper. Imagine two people standing in a room. One is confident, relaxed, open-hearted. The other is anxious, hesitant, closed off. They say the same sentence aloud, I'm ready. But the field only responds to the frequency behind those words. One is vibrating from trust, the other from tension. And the results they receive, the timelines they intersect with, will be dramatically different. Why? Because the universe doesn't respond to language. It responds to vibration. That's the hidden script behind every manifestation. It's not what you say. It's what you are while saying it. And coherence doesn't mean you never wobble. It doesn't require constant bliss. It simply asks for consistency in your return. You can grieve and still be in alignment. You can question and still hold resonance. The key is, don't abandon the emotional frequency you've chosen just because the outer world hasn't yet reflected it. The mirror doesn't move first. You do. What's strange and beautiful is how quickly the field starts to respond once your signal stabilizes. You'll notice subtle ripples first. A sense of ease in your body. A softening of old tension. A surprising email. A gentle synchronicity. The way a conversation drifts into just the subject you needed. These are not luck. They are harmonics. They are reality leaning toward your new tone. Curious, responsive, attentive. And the more you stay with it, the more it compounds. This is what spiritual traditions once called faith, not belief in something external, but a sustained inner fidelity to a chosen reality. To walk through a storm with the tone of sunlight. To carry the aroma of spring, even in the cold. That is not naivety. It's creative precision. The quantum field is not a reward system. It's a resonance system. You can think of it like a prism. Your internal state is the light source. Reality bends and splits according to what you shine through it. If you emit contradiction hope laced with fear, trust pierced by doubt, you'll see a fragmented outcome. But if your emotional frequency is coherent, integrated, embodied, the result is clear, vibrant, aligned. This is how lives are shaped. Not through force, but through frequency fidelity. But let's not reduce this to a checklist. You're not a robot adjusting dials. You're a being learning to remember your original tone, the one before fear, the one before external noise took hold, the one that simply knows deeply, calmly, without needing to prove anything. That knowing is power not aggressive, but undeniable. And when you live from it, the future doesn't just approach, it arrives through you. Here's something most never consider. You are already influencing reality at all times. Every sigh, every glance, every unspoken tension, it broadcasts. The question isn't whether you're broadcasting. It's whether you're doing so with intention or by default. Coherence is what happens when intention and embodiment finally speak the same language. When your nervous system relaxes into what your soul already trusts. And here's the softer truth. You won't feel coherent all the time. That's okay. What matters is how quickly you return. How gently you forgive the wobbles. How quietly you choose again. Over time, your frequency matures. It becomes more stable, like a song you've memorized, not with your mind, but your bones. And when that happens, your outer life begins to reflect your inner rhythm. Not randomly, but precisely. This is why some people seem to carry an effortless grace. They're not lucky. They're tuned. They move through the world with an internal alignment that speaks louder than strategy. And while others are chasing timelines, they're being chosen by them. Not because they begged or worked harder, but because their signal is clear and the universe has no resistance to what's coherent. Your field, your frequency, is always in dialogue with the world around you. The question is, are you speaking from fear or from presence, from trying or from truth? This isn't about being stoic or pretending everything is okay. It's about becoming emotionally honest enough to notice when your tone drifts and loving enough to bring it back without shame. And the more often you do this, pause, feel, realign, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, you don't have to manifest anymore. You simply live in coherence, and reality becomes the extension of that inner steadiness. You stop chasing and start inhabiting. You stop scripting and start singing. So today, if you've been tired of trying, of striving, of doing everything right, and still feeling like nothing moves, know this. It's not your dream that's flawed. It's your frequency that's entangled, not broken, just blurred by noise. And your task is not to force clarity, but to soften until it returns. Close your eyes now, if only for a moment. Breathe as if you've already received what you asked for. Feel the weight lift from your body. Let your breath be permission. Let your spine remember the posture of arrival. Because your body is not separate from the field. It's the instrument through which your reality sings. This is coherence. When the mind stops arguing with the heart, when the heart stops begging for safety, and when the body begins to trust the moment it's in. You won't feel this perfectly, but you will feel it more and more. And eventually, it becomes who you are, not just in moments of stillness, but in the motion of your life. There comes a moment quiet, unannounced, when you no longer ask the universe to deliver something to you, but instead you begin to ask yourself, am I ready to become the version of me who already lives it? And that question shifts everything, not because it changes the external world overnight, but because it recalibrates your internal one. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, not from performance, but from remembrance. You remember what it feels like to move in trust, to act from wholeness, to live as if life is not something to fix, but something to flow with. This is the difference between effort and embodiment. Effort seeks, embodiment allows. And in the quantum field, allowance is not passivity, it is permission. When you allow yourself to fully feel the emotional atmosphere of your desired reality, without resistance, without demand, you create coherence so powerful that the timeline you align with has no choice but to take form around you. Not because you forced it, but because you tuned yourself to its frequency with such intimacy that it recognized you as its natural host. Let that sink in. The life you want is not external to you. It's a frequency echoing softly within the depths of your nervous system, waiting for your full permission to emerge. It doesn't need to be summoned. It needs to be remembered. And the act of remembering, of embodying, is not loud. It's not urgent. It's not manic with motivation. It's steady, subtle, sacred. This is where you begin to see that true manifestation isn't a game of goals. It's a devotion to identity. You no longer wake up asking what you need to do. You wake up asking who you are willing to be, because the being always precedes the becoming. And in quantum terms, the observer and the observed are never separate. The version of you that observes life from a frequency of trust will only ever encounter reflections of trust. This is not wishful thinking. It is the mechanics of resonance. You become magnetic not by demanding attention, but by embodying presence. Presence that doesn't wobble when the evidence is slow to arrive. Presence that doesn't plead for signs, but walks like a living confirmation. You become the answer you've been waiting for. And the field responds, not because it's testing you, but because it is you. Every cell in your body carries memory, not just of trauma, but of timelines. Your skin, your breath, your heartbeat, they are not just physical processes. They are broadcasts. And when your biology comes into harmony with your intention, manifestation becomes less about magic and dashi, more about biology becoming believable. Your nervous system stops scanning for danger and starts welcoming what's already here. This is what most people miss. They try to upgrade their lives without upgrading their identity. They recite abundance, affirmations while vibrating in the scarcity of self-worth. They build dreams atop unresolved grief. And the field, being precise and neutral, responds not to the dream, but to the vibration beneath it. You can't outscript your emotional baseline, but you can transform it. Not by bypassing, but by witnessing. Not by pushing, but by holding. Here's a softer truth that takes time to accept. Sometimes the version of you that was trying to create a better life has to dissolve before the new one can emerge. It's not failure, it's frequency reformation. The parts of you built on proving, on pleasing, on striving, those are not sustainable foundations for coherence. The field is asking for your wholeness, not your performance. And sometimes, to become whole, you have to sit with the fragments. Love them, integrate them, not fix them, but welcome them whole. Because your frequency is not made from perfection, it's made from presence. Real presence, the kind that breathes through anxiety without resisting it. That sits in stillness with shame and says, you're allowed to be here until you're ready to leave. That's the signal the field trusts. That's the tone reality bends for. And here's the mystery. When you begin to live like this, the world stops feeling like a maze and starts feeling like a mirror. Not always clear, not always instant, but faithful. You see your signal reflected in subtle echoes. A word from a stranger, a book falling off a shelf, a delay that becomes a gift. Life becomes less about controlling the path and more about reading it, because the path is not random. It's encoded with your frequency. And when your frequency stabilizes, the path reveals itself with quiet clarity. This is why it's okay to slow down, to stop pushing, to stop hustling for your future like it's a prize you must earn. The moment you breathe into the version of you that already exists in peace, that peace begins to gather mass. Your timelines begin to orbit your frequency like stars pulled into gravity. Not because you willed it, but because you became a center of coherence. And coherence is magnetic dot. So what does it look like to live from this place? It looks like small, sacred choices made in private. It looks like brushing your teeth while feeling abundance in your body. It looks like speaking to yourself with kindness, even when your mind is tangled. It looks like choosing peace before proof, gratitude before gain, stillness before certainty. And over time, that becomes your baseline. Not because you tried harder, but because you chose differently, again and again, until your body memorized the tone of alignment, until your presence became the prayer, until your energy spoke louder than your plans. This is the final, gentle shift. When you stop using manifestation as a tool and begin to see it as a byproduct, a natural extension of who you are when your heart, mind, and body sing the same note. You don't have to chant to make it happen. You have to live in a way that makes it inevitable. And that life, the one you've glimpsed in your quietest hopes, is not waiting. It's listening. So speak without speaking. Breathe with intention. Walk as the version of you who no longer begs for what they already embody. Let every gesture, every pause, every mundane moment carry the frequency of alignment. Let the field Remember you. Let your future recognize your tone, and let the life you desire become the echo of your coherence. There is a strange relief that washes over you when you finally accept that you are not behind, that there is no late in the language of resonance. The version of you that was trying to catch up, prove worthiness, or chase a life imagined in contrast to pain was never the real you. It was an echo, a distortion of urgency born from forgetting. And now you're remembering not facts, not steps, but the frequency you are always meant to live from. Not because someone taught you how, but because your body, your breath, your bones already knew. They just needed enough quiet to begin humming again. You are not a problem to solve. You are a signal waiting to stabilize. And the more you allow your life to become a space for that stability, free from self-judgment, free from borrowed timelines, free from the tension of trying, the more your external world reforms itself around you, slowly, precisely, lovingly, as if life had been waiting for you to arrive not at a destination, but into your own tone. This is not about waking up in perfection. It's about waking up in permission. You permit yourself to feel the emotions you once suppressed. You let go of the identity built around pleasing or performing. You step back into the timeline where wholeness isn't earned, it's remembered. And from that remembered wholeness, the world begins to move differently around you. Not because you finally became worthy, but because you stopped denying that you always were. We are taught that transformation looks like effort, but the deepest shifts are often invisible. A change in posture, a sigh let go without explanation, a smile that wasn't calculated. These are the real pivot points. Moments when the body speaks louder than the story, when the story softens, and when the past loses its grip, not because it was defeated, but because it was no longer needed. And that's the truth about healing. It doesn't erase what happened. It releases the frequency of identification. You stop being the one who was hurt, betrayed, or abandoned, and begin being the one who chose coherence in the aftermath. That choice, made again and again, reshapes your field in ways that physics is only beginning to understand. We now know the heart has its own electromagnetic field, thousands of times stronger than the brain. When your heart enters a coherent rhythm, your entire body follows. Your decisions become clearer. Your language softens. Your immune system strengthens. But beyond the body, something more mysterious happens. Your timeline adjusts. Not with drama, with precision. That's the power of emotional integrity, not dramatic change, but structural recalibration. And this coherence doesn't require you to be calm all the time. It invites you to feel fully without becoming fragmented, to be with anger without letting it poison the signal, to hold sadness like a sacred guest, not a threat, to move through fear as if it's a fog you can breathe through. These are the emotional skills of a coherent being, not detachment. Depth without drowning, feeling without fracture. You begin to notice that life is no longer testing you. It's partnering with you. The delays are no longer punishments. They are gestation periods. The unexpected turns are not detours. They are alignments you didn't have the vision to request. And the people who leave, they exit not because you failed, but because your new frequency no longer fits their pattern. This is not loss. It's resonance enforcement. And it is sacred. The more you live like this, the more your reality starts to feel like it knows you, like it's adjusting to your new rhythm in real time. A job offer arrives just after you. Choose peace over panic. A conversation opens just after you stop forcing one. The right words come when you're not trying to say anything profound. This isn't coincidence. It's vibrational rapport. It's you, aligned with the version of life that mirrors your current embodiment. And perhaps the most mysterious part is this: you no longer need to explain it. You stop trying to convince others of what you feel. You stop over-justifying your boundaries, your visions, your joy, because the signal has become stable enough to speak for itself. You don't debate your path, you walk it. And the ones who are attuned to your new tone, they will find you, effortlessly, magnetically, through no campaign but coherence. Even your body will notice. It will begin to crave different rhythms. You may find yourself waking earlier without alarm, eating slower, listening longer. You may realize that silence doesn't make you anxious anymore. It makes you sovereign. That your mornings no longer start with scrolling, but with stillness. That your movement feels less like exercise and more like devotion. These aren't changes you push. They unfold from the inside because the signal has reorganized the system. And here's what that coherence begins to attract. Not more noise, but more clarity. Not more people, but more resonance. Not more stimulation, but more space. Because a coherent life is not a louder one. It's a purer one. The clutter falls away, not because you throw it out, but because it no longer matches your tone. You stop fighting for peace, because peace becomes your natural default. Not all the time, but more often than not. And that's enough. Because from there, the field can work with you. What you once chased begins to arrive, not with fanfare, but with familiarity. The relationship feels less like fireworks and more like a homecoming. The opportunities don't dazzle you. They feel inevitable. You recognize them not because they impress you, but because they speak the same frequency you've been living. This is what alignment looks like. It stops being exciting and starts being normal, comfortable, grounded. You stop asking, is this it? And start saying, of course, this is it. Because when you live in coherence long enough, the miraculous becomes mundane. And that's not a downgrade. It's integration. It means the extraordinary has become sustainable, repeatable, embodied. And that's when you truly shift timelines, not just for a day or a week, but as a new standard of being. And yet, the work doesn't stop here. It becomes subtler, more inward. You begin to refine your tone like a musician with perfect pitch. You notice when your signal drifts, not with judgment, but with curiosity. You catch yourself reacting, and instead of shame, you choose to breathe. You recenter, you return. And each return strengthens the pathway home. This is how mastery begins, not with grand gestures, but with repeated returns to coherence. You become the kind of person who self-corrects in the middle of a storm, who chooses presence in the middle of pressure, who pauses instead of pushes. That pause, that breath, that is what opens new timelines. Not plans, not pressure. Presence. And in time, your life becomes a quiet miracle. Not because everything is perfect, but because everything is integrated. The highs no longer unbalance you. The lows no longer define you. You move with the frequency of one who knows they are not waiting for life to begin. They are already within it, sculpting it, harmonizing with it. In real time. So the question is no longer, when will it happen? The question becomes, who am I willing to be, even if nothing happens yet? And that question, that frequency, invites everything you thought was lost to begin its return. Not out of desperation, but because the signal is finally clear enough to be found. And in that clarity, the future stops being a hope and becomes a companion. It walks with you, breathes with you, shapes the air around you, not because you claimed it, because you became. It's somewhere along the way, you stop asking the universe to prove itself. You stop needing signs, omens, or magical validations to trust your path. Not because the signs stop appearing, but because you no longer rely on them to believe. Belief has become your atmosphere, a quiet certainty, not rooted in logic, not animated by proof, but radiating from a place so still it begins to feel like the center of everything. That is the gift of coherence, not certainty about the external, but intimacy with the internal. The kind that no longer flinches when outcomes shift, because it knows the signal remains. This inner alignment becomes a form of communication, so fluent it surpasses words. You begin to live inside a conversation with the quantum field that is conducted not through phrases, but through frequency. You feel the shift in your skin before it arrives in your schedule. You sense the timing of decisions not as data points, but as embodied knowing. You don't explain it to others because there's nothing to convince anymore. What was once an abstract hope becomes a living truth. And when you stop broadcasting contradiction, when your words, emotions, identity, and behavior begin to form a unified field, life changes. Not because the outside world bends under pressure, but because you have stopped resisting your own nature. You've stopped distorting your energy by trying to become what you already are. You've remembered, and remembering is the collapse of illusion. Suddenly, everything you are reaching for feels like it's always been here. You were the one adjusting your lens. The nature of reality does not withhold. It reflects. And reflection doesn't speak in promises. It speaks in resonance. That's why your evolution isn't measured in achievements. It's measured in atmosphere. Do you carry peace in your silence? Do you carry ease in your eyes? That's what tells the field where to align you. The frequency doesn't lie. It doesn't rush. And it never forgets what you've chosen to become. But here's the deeper mystery. There is no finish line. Not in this path. Alignment is not a destination. It's a practice of being. You will forget. You will wobble. You will drift into old scripts. And that's not failure. That's part of the spiral. Each return is deeper. Each forgetting shows you how far you've come. And each moment of remembering carries more weight than the last. You become a frequency that remembers itself faster. More gently, more fully, you begin to notice new cues. Not just synchronicities or chance alignments, but subtler markers. The way your breath slows in conversations that used to trigger you. The way you pause before answering instead of performing. The way you choose stillness over stimulation. These are the inner evidences of transformation. Not loud, not cinematic, but cellular. The field responds to this, not because it's big, but because it's coherent. The strange truth is, the more coherent you become, the less you need. Simplicity begins to feel like luxury. Quiet becomes your nourishment. Time feels less urgent and more textured. You begin to walk through your days, not with a plan, but with presence. And somehow, life begins to unfold with a kind of grace that doesn't ask for your control, only your attention. This is not escapism. It's energetic architecture. You are building reality with your choices, with your tone, with your capacity to stay grounded while the storm passes overhead. This groundedness isn't stoicism. It's deep, vibrating trust. Trust that is earned not through answers, but through continuity, through the willingness to keep showing up, keep harmonizing. Even when the music of the world feels dissonant. At this level, even time changes shape. Days feel longer, but not heavier. Moments stretch, not because you're bored, but because you're present. The past loses its grip. The future loses its pressure. You begin to operate from what the mystics called Kairos sacred timing. Not the clock, the pulse, the intuition that knows when to speak and when to stay silent, when to act and when to breathe, when to move and when to remain absolutely still so the field can move for you. And this stillness, it becomes the cradle of your power, not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a magnetic one. You start noticing how people lean closer when you speak softly, how doors open before you arrive, how coincidences start to carry a precision you can no longer ignore. The difference now is you don't chase them. You don't journal them obsessively. You let them pass through you like a current, trusting that what flows also roots. You realize finally that the point was never the manifestation. It was the version of you who could live it without losing coherence. And so the field, always reflecting, begins to deliver not just outcomes, but mirrors. Mirrors that show you your own tone, your own maturity, your own evolution. The partner, the opportunity, the path, they aren't the prize. You are. The field just agrees with you once you recognize it. At this depth of being, even suffering takes on new meaning. You don't bypass pain, you befriend it. You feel it fully, knowing it no longer defines you. You witness your inner contractions with compassion. You hold space for parts of yourself that once only knew survival. And something begins to heal, not just emotionally, but vibrationally. Your trauma no longer filters your frequency. Your identity becomes unstuck from history. You move forward, not to escape the past, but to fulfill what the past once made impossible. The frequency you carry now is not just coherent, it's sovereign. And sovereignty doesn't mean isolation. It means self-authorship. You no longer source your worth from external signals. You no longer tune yourself to noise. You become the broadcasting tower. And the right timelines, the right people, the right moments, they arrive, not as visitors, but as equals, resonant, respectful, recognizing something in you they had forgotten, in themselves. And so your life becomes a calibration station. Others begin to shift just by being near you, not because you teach, but because you are, not because you offer answers, but because your coherence is contagious. And in that influence, you stay humble. You don't claim credit. You don't chase validation. You let the field do the work, because you finally understood that you're not here to be impressive. You're here to be aligned. And in that alignment, every breath becomes a tuning fork. Every pause becomes a portal. Every simple action, pouring tea, tying your shoes, folding a shirt, becomes part of the transmission. You are no longer trying to manifest something out there. You are living as the frequency that makes those realities inevitable. And you understand that this is not special. It is sacred. It is available to all. But few remain still long enough to hear it. Fewer still trust it once it whispers. But you stayed. You listened. You returned again and again until the signal became your second skin. And now, your future no longer hovers ahead like a hope. It breathes through you like a knowing. You walk not toward it, but with it. It walks as you. There is a moment, often unnoticed, when you realize you are no longer watching your life as a delayed reflection, but living it in real time. Not in urgency, but in presence. The gap between thought and experience begins to shrink, not because the world has suddenly become obedient, but because you have, obedient to your own truth, attuned to the frequency of your own becoming. And in that intimacy with the now, something sacred unfolds. The future stops being a lighthouse in the distance. It becomes the tide beneath your feet, moving with you, around you, as you and in that softened state, where striving is no longer the axis of your identity, you begin to listen differently, not just to voices, but to vibration. The room tells you when to speak. The silence tells you when to rest. Your body begins to operate as an oracle, its shivers and stillnesses delivering messages no logic could decipher. The deeper you trust this inner intelligence, the less you require from the outside. Because the field is no longer a place you try to reach, it is a mirror you now live inside. This mirror has no memory, only immediacy. It does not care what you wanted last week. It responds only to what you are right now. And that radical nowness strips away the games of waiting, comparing, performing. You are no longer the seeker. You are the signal. And because the signal is clear, the world arranges itself around you with effortless precision. Not because you control it, but because you've surrendered the interference. At first, this life may feel unfamiliar. There are fewer dramatic highs, less validation, less noise. But in its place, a deeper current emerges. A current of peace so steady, it begins to rewrite your nervous system. You no longer interpret calm as boredom. You no longer chase intensity for proof of meaning. You begin to crave simplicity like medicine, to crave spaciousness like oxygen. And in this wide open interior, your creativity blooms not as performance, but as presence unfolding into form. You become fluent in the language of rhythm. You sense when to speak and when to vanish. You stop forcing timelines and start sculpting energy. You understand that a day of silence can be more productive than a week of action. That a single aligned yes spoken from your gut can do what 1,000 plans could not. And you begin to organize your life not around goals, but around coherence. You rest when your body dips. You rise when your soul hums. You let nature be your calendar, intuition your compass, peace your filter. This is not laziness. It is luminous intelligence. And the more you align with it, the more you realize how much of your former life was built on tension, on the need to prove, to be chosen, to outperform your own doubt. That architecture begins to crumble, not with violence, but with grace. You no longer need the scaffolding of strategy to feel stable. You are rooted now not in structure, but in signal. And from that rootedness, a new kind of confidence is born. One that does not require applause, one that does not shrink in uncertainty. You become a lighthouse, not because you shine brighter than others, but because your beam does not flicker with the wind. Others feel it. They may not name it, but they remember something in themselves when they're around you. Not because you teach, but because you are coherent enough to be felt. And slowly, this coherence touches every part of your life. Conversations simplify, decisions clarify, relationships deepen or dissolve with ease. The energy you used to spend managing contradiction now fuels your embodiment. You move with a different kind of gravity, not heavy but undeniable. Your presence starts to precede you. Runes respond before you speak. Opportunities arrive without pursuit. The field listens always, and now it hears you cleanly. You become trustworthy to yourself, and that changes everything. You stop outsourcing your knowing. You stop crowdsourcing your choices. You stop asking for permission to be who you already are. The inner voice that once whispered now speaks in complete sentences. The body that once hesitated now moves with confidence. The future that once felt like a question mark now feels like a partner. And perhaps most remarkably, your relationship to the unknown transforms. What once felt like risk now feels like play. You begin to see that the unknown is not empty. It is full of versions of you you've yet to meet. You enter it not with fear, but with invitation. The field is no longer a test, it's a dance floor. And you are no longer rehearsing. You are improvising in real time, not as a performance, but as pure frequency and motion. From here, synchronicity becomes ordinary. Not because you are lucky, but because your signal is strong enough to bend time. Your thoughts ripple outward like sonar. Your emotions sculpt possibility. You stop wondering when it will happen, and instead, you wonder how deeply you can trust what is already unfolding. Because now, the unfolding is your rhythm. It breathes with you. It dreams through you. And yet, the deeper this coherence grows, the less you speak about it. The more sacred it becomes, the more private. You no longer need to explain how life is working. You're too busy living it. You move through your days with a softness that needs no defense, a clarity that needs no debate. And in that humility, your power becomes unmistakable. You become the eye in the storm, the calm in the room, the clarity in the question. And even when the world around you trembles, you remember your signal is not fragile. It is tuned. And what is tuned does not break under pressure. It adjusts. It adapts. It continues to transmit. Eventually, the practice becomes the path. Not something you do, but something you are. You wake as coherence. You speak as coherence. You breathe as coherence. And the life that surrounds you is no longer separate. It is your echo. Reality becomes responsive, not because it is your servant, but because it is your sibling. It mirrors your frequency with tenderness, with intelligence, with precision. And in those rare moments when old doubt returns, you no longer resist it. You welcome it like an old friend who has lost its power. You say, I see you, but I no longer live where you dwell. And even this becomes part of the transmission. Your gentleness with yourself becomes part of the tone. You are no longer seeking to erase the past, but to compost it, to turn old stories into soil for new timelines. So when people ask, how did you get here? You no longer give them steps. You give them silence. You invite them inward. Because the path is not a staircase. It's a frequency. And it must be remembered, not memorized. The journey you've taken was never toward something outside of you. It was always a spiral inward, back to the tone you carried before the world taught you to forget. And now that you've remembered, the question is no longer, what do I do? The question is, can I stay here? And the answer is, yes, with breath, with rhythm, with return, because this coherence, this radiant stillness you now call home, it's not a gift the universe gives. It's the language it's always spoken, waiting for you to speak it fluently. And now you do. And so, you rest not because the work is done, but because the signal is strong enough now to continue without straying. You walk through your life not as someone chasing transformation, but as someone who has become it. Your breath is your compass. Your coherence is your map. You no longer beg the universe to respond. You know it already is. Each moment is no longer a test, but a canvas, and you, the frequency that paints it. What once felt like mystery now feels like music. What once felt like waiting now feels like rhythm. There is nothing left to reach, only to remember. And as the day softens, as your body sinks deeper into stillness, let this awareness wrap around you like silk. You are not becoming the version of you who lives that life. You already are, quietly, completely. Now, subscribe to our channel so we can meet again next time. And remember, other stories are waiting, each one a mirror, a melody, a frequency calling you gently home.